video in which we'll be sewing together the patterns for the Osaka kitchen set. We're going to sew a placemat, a napkin, and a tea towel with a beautiful mitered corner finish. Here's what you usually find for these products. Napkins or tea towels with double hems finished simply at the corners like this. It's quick to do but not super pretty. We've chosen to offer you a more meticulous finish with impeccable corners. We've also inserted a cotton wool ribbon at the top of the tea towel so you can hang it up. You can choose between a central or angled loop. Finally, as an option, you can personalize the towel with cotton wool ribbons that can be applied in the same way as stripes. At Ikatee, we love this clean, graphic design. Of course, you can choose to apply just 1, 2, or 3 ribbons, depending on the desired effect, or keep the product plain and simple with no stripes applied at all. The skill level is pretty easy. There are relatively few steps, and they are similar on all 3 products. The only technical point of the pattern is the sewing of the corners, which requires particular attention. You just need to take your time and apply yourself. Careful ironing as you go along is the key to a beautiful finish. As for the fabrics to use, we recommend woven fabrics such as poplin, chambray, denim, jacquard, or linen, which is perfect for table linen and tea towels. Medium-weight washed linen, around 230 grams per square meter, is particularly suitable for this type of project, and will give you a very high-quality finish. Fabrics can be plain or printed, or woven with checks or stripes. As for supplies, all you'll need are 1 centimeter wide cotton wool strips, easily found in haberdasheries or on our Ikatee site in 3 colors. They're thin and supple and easy to apply. For sewing equipment, the placemat, napkin, and tea towel can be sewn entirely on a sewing machine. No need for a serger. In terms of small sewing equipment, you'll need classic scissors or a rotary cutter to cut the fabric pieces, small precision scissors for the finishes, a patchwork ruler or a transparent ruler, and optionally an ironing ruler, a textile pen or tailor's chalk, optionally a stick of temporary textile glue to place the ribbons quickly. This is especially handy if you have a lot of sets and towels to make. You'll also need pins and needles adapted to your fabric. I recommend universal 90 needles to suit poplin, chambray, denim, or linen. As an optional extra, you'll need a punch or point to mark corners. Finally, you'll need sewing thread, which I recommend in polyester for its strength. Straight stitch is used for sewing, with a 2.5 length stitch for assembly and a 3 length stitch for top stitching. We made different versions of the patterns I'm going to present to you now. We start with the off-white linen set, embellished with 3 applique stripes of black cotton twill. Then we have the same version in powder pink washed linen, again with strips of black twill. Finally, we sewed a version in striped chambray, without stripes, and a plain pistachio linen version. In the different versions, we attached the tea towels either in the middle or at the angle of our choice. As the 3 patterns are sewn the same way, I'll show you the complete placemat, which applies equally to the napkin and the tea towel. For the tea towel, there's just 1 step to add, which I'll explain later. For the applique bands option, we'll draw the placement lines for the 3 applique bands. Obviously, you can draw 1, 2, or even 3 lines. We draw them as shown here. The first is to be placed furthest to the right on the right side, 4 centimeters from the edge, and will be 1 centimeter wide. Then the following ones will be 1.5 centimeters apart. Continue by tracing lines 4 centimeters from the edges on each side of the fabric piece on the wrong side, using a textile pen and a patchwork ruler, or by making marks 4 centimeters apart and drawing lines with a long graduated ruler. In each corner, trace the diagonals of the square you've already drawn. A first diagonal, then the second. I mark where the 2 diagonals intersect. Next, I need to mark the diagonal at 1 centimeter from the edge, the diagonal not passing through the corner. I always use my graduated ruler. We'll also draw a 1 centimeter mark from the other edge, still on the same diagonal. This gives us 3 marks per square. The center and the 2 marks 1 centimeter from the edges. Then I repeat the operation on the other 3 corners. For the applique strips option, we'll place the cotton wool strips, 1 by 1, along the placement lines on the right side. To do this, cut strips to the height of the set, towel or detail, depending on the project, with an additional 2-3 centimeters margin. Then carefully place the strips along and between the placement lines, pinning as you go. It's important to be precise, as any gaps or offsets will be very noticeable. So take your time. It's best to use lots of pins to prevent the twill from moving between each section. Check your work and replace the pins if necessary. You can also use a temporary textile glue to hold the strips together by applying glue between the placement lines and applying the strip that will stick all the way through. I still recommend adding a few pins at the end to avoid the surprise of a strip coming unstuck. I'll show you on the machine for one single ribbon that I had ray-sticked and then pinned with a few pins. We're going to use coordinated thread on a spool in black. Here, because I've chosen strips of black twill. And in the bobbin, a thread coordinated with my fabric. I'm going to stitch 2 millimeters from the edge of the strips. To do this, I adjust the needle position by shifting it and test. I've got it. I can sew by starting with a few back and forth stitches, then straight stitch. I can sew through the pins or remove them just before going over them. At the bottom of my strip, I leave the needle stuck in the fabric, lift the presser foot, rotate my work 90 degrees and lower the presser foot to continue. I finish the stitching at the top of the strip with a few back and forth stitches. I repeat, of course, on the other 2 bands. That's it, stitched. I check that everything is parallel and, if necessary, undo with a seam repper and start again. Then I trim the threads and excess strip ends flush with the edge. You may find, as I did, that the black stitches are very slightly visible on the wrong side. It's not a big deal, you can hardly see them. Now I'll fold the fabric right sides together diagonally along my traced line, align the edges by folding at 45 degrees, and pin to hold in place. You can check with a pin that the 2 markings overlay. We'll stitch in a straight stitch between the mark previously made and the mark made on the crossing point of the 2 diagonals, which is here on my fold. It's important to start stitching exactly on the mark with 2 stitches back and forth. To do this, I recommend stitching very slowly, stitch by stitch, then stitching to the crossing point here. Finish with a few stitches back and forth, then repeat on the other 3 corners. Once the stitching is done, trim off the corners by cutting the seam allowance in 2 steps. First, cut close to the edge and the right angle seam. Then trim off a little more of the excess fabric from the seam allowance. At the future corner, we cut diagonally, taking care not to cut into the seam itself. I then repeat on the other 3 corners. Turn the corner right side out, using a bamboo or plastic point or a punch as shown here. I mark the corner and repeat on the other 3 corners. Carefully iron a 2 centimeters tuck along the corners all the way around. If you had a little offset when forming the mitered corners, you can iron out any irregularity by flattening your corners. Then we'll make 1 centimeter ticks on the 4 edges, ironing them carefully, especially at the corners. The hems are then pinned in place all around. For the tea towel, we'll add an optional ribbon in the center. Cut a 15 centimeter strip of cotton twill 1 centimeter wide. Mark the center of the top with a pin and a mark 1.5 centimeters either side of the center. The ends of the cotton twill are then inserted into the hem at these marks, sandwiched between the layers. Be careful not to twist the cotton twill. It should just fold over at the bottom. We'll align the edges of the band from the marks, 3 centimeters apart. Of course, this spacing between the 2 ends can be reduced to suit the desired effect. All that's left is to pin in place. We'll need to iron the fastener in place, flattening the bottom of the fastener and marking the folds at the bottom with an iron. For the tea towel, we can also choose to place the ribbon at the corner. Cut 12 centimeters of a 1 centimeter wide cotton twill strip. Insert the 2 ends of the ribbon at the corner, 5 centimeters from the corner under the hem. Be careful not to twist the cotton twill. However, the binding will flatten out and form a corner. It's time to iron. For all versions, placemat, napkin or tea towel, all that's left to do is top stitch all around in a straight stitch, 2 millimeters from the edge of the hem. Start with a few back and forth stitches. At each corner, leave the needle planted in the fabric, lift the presser foot, rotate the work 90 degrees around the needle, lower the presser foot and continue stitching all the way around. Finish with a few back and forth stitches. A little more ironing for a perfect finish. And that's it, your Osaka kitchen set is finished. We've made placemats, napkins, and a tea towel in a modern, clean, and chic style, perfect for the kitchen or elegant tables. We hope you'll be pleased with your creation too. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe to our channel. We can't wait to see your versions. So join us on Instagram with #Ikatee Osaka. See you soon at Ikatee.